Welcome, everyone, to the Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Steve Suarez, where every week I bring my 20-plus years of experience in the plumbing and contracting business to help out homeowners such as yourself, providing information, introduction to industry peeps that can help them. Yes, that can help them, on their homeowner quest, and also a little insight to how customer service should be and the type of service they should get. Joining me, as she does every week, is my co-host Megan Ozer, who represents our homeowner aspect of the show, the homeowner opinion.
Layperson.
Okay, you don't like layperson. I said the
just
homeowner.
Sounds so funny.
To decipher, you decipher some of the lingo to kind of. So we're actually communicating, and we're opening up that communication so nothing gets lost in the translation.
I'm sticking with it.
Is that?
I'm gonna stick with layperson. Extraordinaire. Right. Extraordinaire's got. That's what it.
Okay. Then we got Megan, the extraordinaire.
It does it
and
for me.
Joining us on today's show, along with myself and
extraordinaire,
the jardinera, the jardinera herself, we have Mr. Zach Massell with Chicago Water and Fire Restoration. Zach has been on the show. Actually, this is his second appearance on it. Welcome back, Zach.
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Well, you know what? I wanted to have you on again because, well, it's been kind of a rough winter, and I wanted to talk to you about just some of the stuff that's happened since then with the weather going from severely cold to warm relatively quickly, and
warm.
All the...
It's not warm.
Warmer.
Mm-hmm. So
warmer.
Cold.
So if it goes from 0 to 40 degrees, would you say that's warmer?
I would say we're still in the cold range. It's less cold, Steve. Less frozen.
Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to have you on here, but before we discuss that, I wanted to tell you guys or talk about something a job that I did over the course of last week, and possibly it was over a few days, but finished it up last week. I installed a soda machine in a residential application in the house.
I didn't see you at all last week.
I know. Well,
I was sad.
You were?
Nah.
Thanks. It's good to be loved and missed. But this soda machine, it's designed for a residential application, designed for a home, and it has looks much like you would have that you'd see at a bar or a commercial application with the gun that fills up the drinks. And this one, a hole was drilled in the countertop right next to where your soap dispenser would be, and it used the sink as a drain. And it was so you'd have your faucet here, and then you'd have your little gun where you can fill up your drinks or whatever, and then any residue or anything would go into the sink. And they had Diet Pepsi and Diet.
I was going to ask,
Dr.
what did
Pepper,
they have?
And they had an opening for Coke or lemonade, whatever. I mean, they had it set up. You can have it set up for one or as many drinks as you actually want. But I mean, they had three settings for it, and it was actually pretty cool. I mean, the only thing, it came with the compressor, the box, the chiller, everything. They had to get their own CO2 tank, but it came with everything that you needed to do it, and it was just a matter of putting it in the right location where it was accessible and where you can get to your syrup containers. But everything went in relatively smoothly. The only thing that I would say was the instructions were not for a layperson, if you will.
Oh, you're saying I couldn't do it, Steve?
No, I'm saying that they were written by somebody who does that for a living, and not for somebody who this is the first time seeing it. So
like IKEA instructions.
Exactly. So, and I found it interesting. The only reason why I mentioned it is because, well, I didn't know that they sold these for residential applications, and two, the homeowner had a hard time. The reason why I wound up doing it is, in my doing commercial application, I've seen how they've done it, and I've seen them installed. I've never done it personally, but they couldn't find anybody. they called commercial beverage companies, and I don't do residential. And they were telling her that at the place they bought it that, any handyman could do it. I'm looking at this. I'm like, no, they can't. There is no way they were doing this. I mean, this took a little bit in designing, or not designing, but putting everything in an application or in a position where you can access it. It's accessible. It's not taking up underneath your cabinet. It's not. It's in the perfect location. And when we got done, she was very happy with it. It was working, and we were glad we can help her out because she couldn't find anybody to do it.
Do you think it was a job for a plumber? If you had to pick any trade to...
I think probably a plumber would have been the closest to this, I think, because of just...
Good to know when I put in my next soda machine.
If you saw that, you'd get one. It's actually pretty cool. And you could adjust the syrup you can have it where it's kind of soda-y or kind of carbonated, or you can have it where it rots your teeth. I mean, you could just get either. You got the dial.
I would choose the rot my teeth.
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. If you could get soda in your house and you could adjust it, you're putting it at the point.
Duh.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of course.
You're rotting your teeth.
No. Skimp on it. Go light. I'm the one footing the bill.
Exactly.
Put it on the set.
Go heavy.
Put it at.
You're going full syrup on that thing.
I wouldn't have teeth left.
Oh, it
would be bad.
It was cool. You could adjust. I mean, you could literally dial that in where you can get the syrup. They give you a little container.
I'm going to be calling you this week.
I know. I'm can I get her in?
And actually, they were relatively reasonable. It wasn't that expensive.
Really?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. I mean, it went in. The box, I want to say, where the condenser and where everything connects, this thing was probably the size of double what a computer tower would be. Remember the old computer towers? It was double that. Mm-hmm. The cylinder for the CO2 tank was probably about maybe 18 inches tall. And the hoses went up to underneath. We drilled it underneath the floor. We put the soda boxes or the syrup boxes on a shelf in the basement. We put the box on the shelf in the basement. We mounted the gauge for the soda machine and the air lines on the wall where you can see everything, and everything came up through the counter underneath the sink. The manifold for the bar gun went right mounted on the side of the cabinet. Still had full room of the cabinet underneath, and went up through the hole in the countertop.
I'd be using it for everything.
Oh yeah, they loved it. I mean, it was
Cooking
actually
with
pretty
soda,
cool.
Bathing in soda.
I literally checked the parts.
What?
I went to a place where there was a soda machine.
Uh-huh.
And I got my drink and I'm driving in my car drinking it. And I got in my car like 3 hours later and like, wow, this ice will not melt. And I opened it up. Part of the nozzle and had shot into my beverage and no one had noticed it. And I had this nozzle and
the whole thing.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, do I call them? Do I ask them if they want this back?
Do I rebuild one with this?
No, actually, it was pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
so I have parts. I'm building it slowly but surely. Just little by little, I'm gonna build my machine.
No, this little, like I said, this gun. It had the little buttons on it where you can hit. You can hit Coke, you can hit Diet Coke, you can hit lemonade,
extra syrup.
And, no, you have a little dial underneath that you can adjust it.
Man.
Oh yeah, I'd have it on rot your teeth. I'm telling you, that thing would be so sweet. Oh yeah, it's just, excuse me.
People pulling up to your house.
Exactly.
I'll take a recall.
Exactly. Have a drive-through right through, come up to the house.
for their
free refills.
Man.
But I mean, like I said, I've never seen this before, and the fact that it was relatively straightforward to install. And it really was not that expensive. I thought it was but you really don't, but I mean, all joking aside, even if you don't drink soda, you can get lemonade, you can get Gatorade, you can get the Arnold Palmer.
Soda.
You can get so many different things because the water, you can even just, if you drink carbonated water, it'll do that. Mm-hmm. So, and the water's filtered.
Strangest thing you've ever installed?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I would say that I did that and I fixed the jacuzzi tub and actually having to weasel your way around the back of this jacuzzi tub to fix the jets. Yeah, we did that once, too. Yeah.
You do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I did.
You get intrigued by the most difficult jobs.
Because
you do a job everyone else says
Jack
no to,
of all
and you're
trades.
like,
I take it as a challenge.
I wonder. You do. You kind of take it as like, oh, they said no, did they?
Well, I bet Plumber Steve could do it.
But even if I've never done it before, if I do it once, I could say, okay, I know what it entails, and I could decide, do I want to continue, or do I want to go and, okay, this is not something I'd do again.
with proper instruction, could someone like me install that?
If they had it done where it was designed for a homeowner, yes, you could. Yes, you could.
Could you rewrite the manual?
It's pretty much if they rewrote the manual and made it more for a homeowner, it would work.
I think you should rewrite one for
the way they wrote it was like somebody who knew what they were doing with it and automatically understood that these are what the parts were. This is what it is. That's why it took us so long. And I took a little bit longer because I wanted to put this in a way where they had it originally going in a cabinet in the kitchen. And this would have destroyed, because they just had new cabinets, this would have destroyed the cabinets that they just put in, because this unit needs air. It needs to breathe. It needs louvers because it gets, it's a condenser on
What's
it.
a louver, Steve?
It's little holes or openings in the door.
Got it.
So it allows air to come in. So instead of putting it upstairs in a cabinet and taking cabinet space, we put it on a shelf in the basement, which was right underneath because the basement was unfinished, right underneath the basement and the shelf, and it was open to air. So it had air to get cool,
breathe.
and
Makes sense.
the hoses were there, and if they had to change the syrup, they were fine.
Zach, what 3 flavors of soda pop would you choose for your soda machine?
I'm a Coke guy.
Are you?
Yeah, Coke for sure. Coke
June's
over
a Coke
Pepsi.
girl, right? Or you're the Coke?
I'm
Pepsi.
I'm
However,
Pepsi.
I like that cherry Coke Zero. I'd tap into that.
You can get anything.
I'm going to look into it. I'm going to have
Evan,
Evan
what
build
would be
me one.
yours?
Cherry Coke, probably.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the go-to.
Oh, yeah.
It's good stuff. That's good stuff.
See what you learn on the
Thanks for
Prepare
that,
to Repair
Steve.
show?
Wow.
You're listening to Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Steve Suarez, and on the show today, we have Megan Ozer, which is my trusty sidekick, and Zach Massell with Chicago Water and Fire. And Evan joined us on a little soda talk this morning,
so
or this afternoon, before, at the start of the show, which is pretty cool. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back after this with the home. Good afternoon, everybody. Today's homeowner hack tip is basically it's about you, all about you as the homeowner. And the fact that you as the homeowner have 100% control and decision-making of everything that goes on in your home. No matter how stressful the situation may be or how bad things may seem, you must always maintain control of your home and what goes on in it. At the most stressful times is when the bad and unscrupulous contractors and service people are going to be there to take advantage. This almost always makes everything worse. You have the power to just say no. No matter what's happening, what's going on, you have the power to say no. You don't have to feel intimidated or pressured in anything. That is what pretty much they're betting on. If you ever feel uncomfortable or pressured, take the time, stop, find someone else. Even if your issue seems really bad, more often than not, the time needed for a second opinion is not going to matter in the overall scheme of things. Take the time, find a good, reputable company that would be there to help you out. Good reputable companies and people are there to help you out when you are in need. They are going to be part of the solution to your issues, not part of the... Welcome back to the Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Plumber Steve with RJ Graham Plumbing. Back with me is...
Go ahead.
Is Magnificent...
What you got now?
Magnificent Meg.
There's a different name every time.
The extraordinaire co-host.
The
and
person.
Zach Massell with Chicago Water and Fire Restoration. And, glad to have you here, Mac.
Mac.
Zach.
Mac. Did you call me Mac?
Yes.
Well, together we're Mac.
It gets easier every time.
Exactly.
It's like Benifer.
It's my words. I have trouble with my words. I've only been doing this for...
I know.
Oh, also, too. We're going on a second year.
Are you?
Yes, this is the
Wow,
second year.
congrats.
February 8th was the first show. February 8th of 21.
Good for you.
How awesome is that?
That's pretty cool.
So,
Pretty cool.
What did you think of our homeowner?
I actually love the homeowner's hack. Myself, as a homeowner, and I'm going to say out of every, I'm just going to say a marriage, right? I would say that there's one person in the marriage that kind of not necessarily wears the pants, but is more assertive as far as when, like you said, if you're hiring somebody in your home to come into your home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that person. I am a okay, yes. So I like that you said that because, when we would have people come in our house for whatever reason, my husband's normally working, I was at home. I honestly would have the first person come in. I don't even know what they would say and be like, okay, just do it. I like that you said, look at who you're hiring and take your time. And what I remember when I first met you, and it was funny because you weren't hiring me as a plumber. So it really, it was irrelevant to me coming on. But you had said that when you go into a homeowner's house, or on the phone or whatever, your entire team, you tell them, what you're going to do, and you give them a price, but then you give them time. You give them, I want to say you said 3 days.
Right.
I love that because, like I said, when you're on the spot and you're pressured, I feel like I would immediately just say, yeah, do whatever. But if you're like, hey, think on this and get back to me.
My wife would completely agree with you.
Yeah.
She's that exact kind of person that first person that comes in,
yeah.
she's going to say yes just because she doesn't want to
Totally.
deal with any extra pressure. She doesn't want to deal with somebody else coming in.
Right.
She's just looking for that person that
and I don't know what they're, not to sound like, I'm a total idiot, but I don't necessarily know if what they're saying is actual fact. We had to have our sump pump replaced, and he's like, well, this and this and this, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying.
But couple that, like you said, with the position you were in, we have water everywhere, and it's a stressful situation where, say, a pipe burst, or you've got water everywhere. You're just, I need it done now. It's like the sense of urgency is overwhelming at the time. So the first somebody comes in, well, they're here, I might as well have them do it. And that's, if you get the right person, they're going to give you a good price, the right price, no matter if you're in a stressful situation or if you're in a standard situation.
I would feel like most people would definitely take advantage of the stressful situation and mark up that emergent price.
Exactly, and that's what's wrong with a lot of companies out there. They get predatory. And honestly, here's the flip side. Here's what I do. And I'll give you an example. I had a customer that called us. His daughter had an issue with a water heater that burst on the third floor of a condo in Midlothian. This was, I want to say, 10, 12 years ago. And they needed somebody, and I went out there and I shut the water off so it didn't damage anything below. I went there at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then I was back there, I want to say the next morning, with a new water heater that would fit because it was underneath the counter in this condo. It was really difficult to get to. Now, we gave him a price as if it was just a regular job, and that's what it was. And she was ecstatic, but, again, it was her first condo. She didn't really know. But the one who recognized was her father. Now, her father still uses us for all of his stuff to this day.
That's awesome.
And it's one of those things. And he said to me, he goes, every time, we talk, he says, when you came out and you took care of my daughter and you got it all done, didn't take advantage, and the price was what it would normally be if it was just a regular situation, that impressed me. And he has called us, like I said, for the last, 10, 12 years it's been. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where good people are going to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the bad ones out there are going to make it bad for everybody else. But that's why I said you could probably expand on this a little bit more, Zach, because if you walk in there, and let me ask, and tell me if I'm wrong here, say you have a pipe burst, or you have a sump pump that failed and you've got water in the basement. All right. Now, that water, you've already got it shut off. You've already got as much water damage as you're going to be. Yeah, the damage is already done. Somebody comes in and says, I want to charge you, say, $2,000 to replace, 4 inches of this pipe that burst. And it's like, okay, if I wait, I got to take this guy because he's here, but I think $2,000 is outrageous. Mm-hmm. But if I wait and I contact somebody who can get here, like, say, in the morning, say this is at 10 o'clock, and I wait until the morning, and I'm going to bed anyway, it's like there's really not much you can do. and somebody's going to be able to do it for just exactly what a normal price. I have options at that time, and I get it done for, say, $500.
But here's my question: is most people, most homeowners, maybe I'll say most women. I shouldn't stereotype
just
like
homeowners,
that.
yeah.
I don't know the prices of these things. I
No.
think we need like a master list of what things normally cost. Because I'd be
But
like,
when
Piper,
you-
$6,000 sounds about right. Thanks, I'll take it.
But when you call around and you're like, well, here's the thing. You know when you find out about that? You find out after you've spent that $2,000.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what
somebody
I don't wanna
tells you
find
that
out.
it was
Yeah.
$500. So you know what they do? People go and then they start bashing that company that they spent $2,000
Yeah.
for. When in reality, is it wrong that they did that and took advantage? Yes. But realistically, you agreed to it at that point. So it's like, okay, you can bash them, but is that, I don't know.
I know, I'd still bash. I mean, come on, they're totally taking
Oh,
advantage.
yeah, they are.
That's just
They're
sucky.
rotten for doing that. But I mean, at this point in time it's one of those things where you're expecting a tiger not to be a tiger. You
Here we
understand?
go with your.
Yeah, I think
You see what I mean on that?
Analogies.
It's like,
I think
just don't use
nowadays-
them again.
Sure. And nowadays, with the advent of social media and everybody asking everybody, even me and myself, my wife, we're in different Facebook groups just for our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So if there's
You were just talking about that, Meg.
there's
How he didn't answer my friend request?
No, how you were talking to different Facebook
I'm
groups for the
ta-
neighborhoods,
yeah.
talking to people.
That's where everybody wants to
a
know.
lot of people will go on to Google, they'll go on to Yelp, they'll ask their actual neighborhood. There's next door apps. So a lot of people are looking for referral-based business, especially
Definitely.
especially when they're stressful, especially when they're in these situations when they don't know who to trust. They're trying to, Steve, as you said, get away from those unscrupulous contractors.
I love that
and
word.
they want to find people that they know they're going to do a good job. They're going to do what they say they're going to do. They're going to stand behind their word, and they're going to take care of their home, because at the end of the day, our home is our castle, and that's where we go to feel safe, and that's where we go to put our head down at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that everything that happens there, we feel good about it, we trust it. So I absolutely get what you're talking about, and that's generally how we get involved. At Chicago Water and Fire is a restoration company. Most of our business is referral based. We work with trusted contractors like yourself that when unfortunately these losses happen, a pipe bursts, there's a sump pump failure, there's something that happens, there's a water heater that all of a sudden starts to leak on the third floor of a condo. Cleanup needs to happen. There needs to be somebody else involved. So you guys are first on scene, where generally you're stopping the source. So if I'm a homeowner, one of the things that I really want to focus on when I experience a loss is just making sure that I don't have to fix the source. So if I've got a contractor in my home, if I've got a plumber, whoever it is, and I'm not really, just something in my guts not meshing with that person, whether it's what they're telling me, how they're telling me, I don't know. Maybe they are pressuring me, and I just feel really weird with prices and the way that things have to be done. As Steve said, you're in control. You can pause. The biggest thing is making sure that the source is stopped. As long as the source has been stopped, it doesn't have to be repaired. I don't have to necessarily pay for the repair right away. So make sure that it's stopped. So what can I know as a homeowner that helps me out to at least stop the source? Know where my water shutoffs are.
Right.
Everyone should know that, right?
So once I've at least got the source stopped, from there find that right contractor, find the person that you feel good with, try to repair the source. And even from an insurance standpoint, and we can get into this more, but even from an insurance standpoint, if this is a covered loss, I need to make sure that I am not being negligent to not follow my duties after a loss. I need to make sure that I'm starting to do a cleanup, whether I file a claim or not file a claim. Because again, most people haven't been in these situations where they have a water loss or a fire loss at home. I have up to a year to actually file a claim, but I don't have up to a year to start to clean
it up, right,
after the damages. So insurance companies will say, if I'm waiting too long, you've been negligent, and we're no longer going to cover this claim. So how do you find the right person from a restoration standpoint?
Right.
Can you give me an example of a loss or like a previous job that you've done.
So we do everything. When I say a loss, this means residential, this means commercial, this means industrial, but that's, as our name implies, Chicago Water and Fire Restoration. We do water damage that includes mold, that includes sewage, that includes the fire side. We do smoke, fire damage, we do biohazard. We also clean up contents.
Ooh.
Sometimes contents gets involved in all of these losses. And we're also full service. So depending on the loss, our goal is to save as much as we can. So if we can save drywall, if we can save flooring, it really just depends on the type of loss, the source of that loss, as well as the material. So if we can save everything, we're going to save it.
How can you tell?
What a great question.
We had our sump pump back up, and we just put the drywall in for a new room in the basement. And we're like, is there mold in that drywall? We don't know. Or under the flooring?
It really depends. So we do have a few different pieces of equipment that will tell us what levels of moisture are present.
That's cool.
One of those is an infrared camera. We've also got moisture meters. There's a few other things that go into it.
That's awesome. I honestly thought you had to just rip a hole in the wall.
Really depends on the material, and it depends on how saturated, how wet something is, how much damage has been there, how long it's been sitting. Mm-hmm. Water... Unfortunately, water likes to cause a lot of damage. Mold can start to form within as soon as 24 hours.
I think that's the scariest thing.
So the challenge is, and again, even as a homeowner, I still have time after that loss has happened. Most people want to get things done right away, including myself. Not to sidebar too much, but I personally had a loss during this crazy winter storm over Christmas. Once everything decided to drop down to negative 30, we had 2 pipes burst at my own house. And I know the things to do. I know to leave the cabinet doors open and leave the faucet on. And we already had a space heater out to combat these areas, and it still just didn't matter. So fortunately, I know a company.
Do you? Gosh.
Got to give me their number.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there is a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, you still have enough time to have due diligence done. If you do want to have multiple companies come out, one of the things that we like to promote is that all of our estimates, when we come out as a company, they're all no cost and no obligation. And so there's no cost to have anybody come out. That means at 11 o'clock at night or 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve. But that also means that there's no obligation to perform any work. So we're not charging anything, and the goal isn't to pressure somebody into making a decision that they're not comfortable with.
Yeah,
and
that's super important.
Because we are full service, if we do have to remove something, like in my own house, again, some of that drywall had to come out. Some of the flooring had to come out. We have the ability to put that back. So does somebody have to use this for that? No. If they've got a contractor, maybe you've already had a basement remodel or an addition put on, and you really love that individual, great. You're more than comfortable.
So sometimes you'll just go out there and assess the situation with the equipment you have.
Sometimes we need to do just the cleanup, and then other times we are full service where we're putting everything back, and that's also part of our service, and I hope it speaks to that because of the type of work we do and the quality of work we do and the trust that we build with our customers, that they're very happy they've got a company that they can use to put everything back. They don't have to find somebody else if they don't want to.
I would never know. Like when you said we were having Zach on, I'm like, what's water and fire? What? I literally had no idea. Oh. So if I was in this situation, I would think, I'm going to have to get a hold of a carpenter. Like, I would never think. Now I know. That's really good to know.
A lot of people don't know. And that's why, one of the reasons why I like to have guests like Zach on, that when they expand on what they do, people are like, I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
And that's what, we try to do the show to be, is to be a tool to help out people and give them the information that is going to make them more knowledgeable.
I thought Zach was a soccer player.
No. In case you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Prepare to Repair show here on 1340 WJOL. I am your host, Plumber Steve with RJ Grant Plumbing. And I've got Mega Meg, the magnificent one, and Zach Massell with Chicago Water and Fire Restoration, who's just giving us some information on how to handle a loss and what exactly, what your options are. And I want to, touch on that because, I was saying you do have options. And that's why I always want people to say you do have options, because, you're going to have bad out there. and they're going to be. And I'm not saying leave everything the way it is. Don't do anything. Ignore it. But what I am saying is if you feel uncomfortable at any point in time, the way to take away the power that a lot of these people coming in is that sense of urgency. They feel they have you in a position where you have no choice. And the bottom line is you always have a choice. You it's looking at it and says, okay, is an hour or is it a few hours going to really do anything? I'm already at that point. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's frustrating that you're there, but don't let that make a situation worse.
Sure.
And I think you can do that. You know what I mean?
I completely thought when we had our sump pump completely failed. Well, okay, here's an interesting situation. Mm-hmm. Our sump pump failed, and I wouldn't think this isn't an emergent situation. I would think, yeah, this is emergent. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't think just clean it up and kind of do your homework to see if you can get out to fix that, because it was still pouring rain.
Yeah.
So what in that situation? Am I just going to sit out downstairs with a bucket?
No, you don't do that because, basically the water in your pit is the same height as that water is throughout the home perimeter of your basement. So as that water's coming up, because I say that because we had a customer who called up and they were freaking out because they were bucketing that water out of the pit,
right back to the
yeah, and they were dumping it outside, which is right next to the house, which is going right in the drain tile. And then I told her, I said, the water in that pit is the same level as the water throughout the whole perimeter of the basement. I just heard silence and the bucket drop. I mean, I just let the wind out of this poor woman's sails. In that particular, case, then, you call around to different people and, get a hold of, try to get a hold of as many people as you can that's going to be able to come out and get a hold of the reputable people. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, the reputable people, the good ones, are going to be busy. They're going to be, if it's that kind of situation where it's raining and it's a weather emergency, they're going to be, you want to get on their schedule. But also what I say, and I say from the beginning, is have your team.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have your guy.
Your team.
Have somebody ready already.
So in other words, I would be, on the phone with a Zach, with, Chicago Water and Fire. And the reason why is I need to know what you guys do. Because if anything happens, if anything comes up, I want to know, I got you. And then you're like, yeah, I have my team. I have my plumber. I have my electrician. I have my HVAC guy. I have people that I've used in certain situations where I know how they're going to be there. And then I'm a customer.
Right.
And once you're that customer, it's we got you.
Just like when your pipe bursts, you have.
I know who I'm calling.
I had people in my neighborhood, and their pipes, they were frozen, and I remember I'm Christmas shopping because it was Christmas Eve. Of course I was. And I'm texting you, and I'm like, I certainly didn't want him to get out there. I know he was busy, but I was like, oh, do you have any verbal help I can give this girl? But have your person.
Sure. I was actually one of 3 on our block that had pipes burst.
Oh, God. Were you like, sorry guys, mine are fixed.
Right,
and
we
Merry
did
Christmas.
Those jobs. The neighbors know me. They saw the truck.
How do we get your guy? Can he come to our house?
Absolutely. And my biggest challenge too, again, knowing your team, having your people prepared. My biggest challenge, because my loss happened on Christmas Eve. Sure, we shut off the water, we stopped the source, but it was to decide, okay, who am I going to bug to now come out on Christmas Day to fix this? So fortunately, I know a lot of people being in this industry. There's a couple of guys that work right down the road for me. So the first guy I called said, hey, I'm already been running all day on Christmas Eve, and said, I've got a full schedule the next day. So just when your team's out here, let me know. So,
wow.
So I didn't have to bug him too badly.
Yeah. Because, Christmas is kind of an emergent situation.
Yeah.
This
weather was a pretty extreme, and you had a perfect storm there. So, but again, it's, and I say this is having the right team, but also too, I think a lot of prevention can help with. Obviously, in situations like yours, it may not be able to because you just have the bad weather. But
same with me, my sump pump. It wasn't even a year old.
Right. Well, that you don't expect that to happen. But what I recommend in that aspect is
there's a backup one.
There's a backup one.
Yeah.
And I've had people who say, "Well, I've got a generator. I don't need a battery backup." Well, the thing is even when you're primary pump fails, you still have power.
Yeah, it's not electrical.
The power, your pump is going to
Yeah.
fail. And pumps don't say, you know what, I'm going to fail in about 2 days, so you might want to do something. No, they don't tell you. Even if it could be 6 months old and it'll fail. It's made by humans. So having that battery backup, it gives you time when you hear that alarm go off. Okay, I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a remedy that you can have. And also there's some products that we can that we have out there that are on water supply lines that they sense when there's a water leak.
You can get notifications.
Yeah, and it'll shut. And there's valves, automatic valves. Once they get wet, they shut the main water shutoff off. Now it will minimize the damage. So then when you have an issue, it minimizes the loss. You guys can come out there, take care of that, and minimizes the damage. So there are products out there that will do that. Or you could be like another plumber friend of mine that uses that valve when his teenage son is basically using more water than...
That's me.
So he cuts the water off. Time is up, buddy.
Yep. I just asked my husband last week, I go, you got to show me where that valve is, because we have our 13-year-old, I'm not kidding you, I'm not exaggerating, 15 minutes in the shower.
Wow.
That's pruny.
Insane.
That's pruny.
So, besides different options that you're able to provide, there's definitely a few things that you can do at home. And again, some of those options were things that I knew and did in extreme weather situations. But I also picked up a really good tip from the plumber that I used, and fortunately we were home, so the damage was minimized. I can only imagine had I been out, as so many people were, and they came home after the Christmas weekend to a ice skating rink in their home. But a couple of things that you can do.
I was going to say, what are you going to do next time?
Especially in the wintertime, if you're traveling for any length of time, you're not going to be home. A great tip that this plumber gave me was to not only turn off your water while you're gone, but then to also drain your lines. So depending on how paranoid you want to get, especially if you know there's going to be a bad storm, even if you do have a pipe burst, now I've got no water.
Is there a downside to that? I feel like there might be a downside to that, no?
There's not a downside to it. The only thing is you're still not going to drain all the water out, so you still are going to get some sort of pipe failure on it. But it won't be catastrophic to the point where it's going to be a swimming pool when you get home.
Now, what are you going to do for next time if you did everything?
So now that we've had our loss, and because of the method that mitigation happened, meaning we had 2 pipes burst in our master bath is over our garage. So
is he going to have to do that one thing that we talked about? Look at you, got excited.
We'll see if I say the thing.
Oh, sorry. It was our homeowner hack last week.
So now that the vanity has been removed and we had access to the plumbing, we actually saw our plumbing isn't on the exterior wall. There's a little attic cubby in between. And
look
so
at your face.
all that air was getting trapped.
No, I learned all about it last week.
She was asking me about that because we were talking about this.
I didn't.
Oh my God. You have to listen. It's literally exactly this. There's like a trapped...
Yeah, she was asking me about this. She goes,
so crazy.
Is this even a thing? How often does this happen?
He was giving this hack, and I'm like, how many people is this actually going to happen to, Steve? And look, that's so funny.
It has happened to your next guest.
That's crazy. Yeah. So did you put in some? I'm excited.
So there's 3 things that we know we're going to be doing, with potentially a little bit more, because I don't plan on restructuring the entire home, and I'm going to continue living here. And unfortunately, living in the Midwest, we know it gets very cold in the winter. We can almost guarantee there's going to be some kind of winter storm at least every year, if not every other year. So how do I deal with this? Because I don't want a loss when this happens again. That being said, we need to do a little bit of spray foam on the interior wall before that attic cubby, before it gets to the exterior wall. The insulation was very present on the exterior wall, but on the interior where the actual plumbing was, that the bathroom backed up to, was very non-existent.
Okay, but what Steve said about insulation, because I asked, is insulation will keep things warm, but it will also keep things refrigerated and cold.
It will trap whatever's in there.
Right.
So before we spray foam, we had another another solution that, again, I could be right or could be wrong.
I'm
still open.
I want to hear it.
I'm
Go.
still open to ideas. So there's two other things that we know that this is going to prevent, but and still we're not 100% sure that we're necessarily addressing the problem. We don't think so. So
right.
there's ongoing things. But anyway, the other two are there is low voltage wire that plumbers use sometimes to unfreeze pipes. And I already see Steve shaking his head. He's like, nope, don't ramp that.
No.
Don't ramp that.
Guess what that'll do?
He's like, you're going to start a fire.
Yes.
He's like, you're gonna burn down your house.
Do you know why you can't?
I know, because you told me.
Because those come in long lengths.
They have to wrap around each other. Okay.
And if you wrap it around itself, it heats up and it smolders.
It just burns
you
each
can't
other.
cut it to fit.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I actually received a pack that came in, there's different lengths that you can buy, but I understand what you're saying.
And are you going to bury that in the ceiling?
Bury that
in your castle, Zach.
The wall. So again, none of these are permanent, but
we
these are
have
just
the
ideas.
solution.
I have another option.
We have the solution.
Well, so then another thought was to also add an access vent and door to make sure that cold air is not getting trapped.
Yes.
And it would then mean that this access door and vent is going into my closet. So it would keep everything in my closet nice and cool, but that would also help to prevent making sure that air is not just being trapped.
Yep.
See, I had that same issue happen on a number of occasions, and because of the way the house was structured, you could not do certain things to remove it. It wasn't an option. So what we did was kind of take a louvered vent, like a return type of grate. You can get them in 12 by 12, 12 by 16. You move your insulation out of the way and just make sure that's right on it. And normally your garage will get, if it's insulated and it's part of the house, it will get roughly maybe 45 degrees. It doesn't really get that cold, even on the coldest of days. So what happens is you allow that air, which is coming right up against those eaves, right up against that side, it's going to come through because it's using that joist channel or that opening as like a duct, like a channel.
Sure.
And it sits in there. Exactly. So if you can have that warm air come up and circulate through that so that cold air doesn't become a pocket, that minimizes it from freezing. I had that happen at my house. It was freezing on one of the sinks, and I cut out a section of the ceiling. I moved the insulation right above that, and it used to freeze every time it got cold. It didn't burst, but it used to freeze. And I got aggravated when I moved in because I'm like, if somebody would have told me this and I would have had to find out because I had flooded out my garage, I would have been very upset. But it didn't. I found it out, and I'm like, okay, I fixed it. And that right there, a grate that cost me maybe $20, cutting it out and maybe moving some garbage, not garbage bags, but removing some insulation, solved the problem, and it was easier than moving anything, and it allowed the air to circulate. So that is something. But here's another option, too. If you have a closet where that can be getting it colder in there, what you could do is you could probably put maybe a smaller heater in the garage. They have ventless type heaters that you can use that will be able to keep that air in the garage at a point of comfort where it's not going to do anything that's going to cause any kind of it's going to keep it warm, but it's not going to cause your bill to go up too high.
If it's 2023, if you don't have a heater in your garage, I mean,
what am I doing with my life?
So
come on.
So we've covered a lot of stuff, but it's cool that we can tie everything in, and you ran into that. But you know what?
That's funny because I was like, that doesn't happen.
I want some listeners. Let's go real quick. We got about 5 more minutes left, about 4 or 5 more minutes left in the show. Run through some of the other things you do. I mean, like you do mold mitigation. Do you do any other kind of mitigation besides mold?
So we do mold, we do sewage. Sometimes people will have backups or fill-ups in their home where that's dealing with their sewage, with waste. Sometimes it's their waste. Sometimes it's everybody else's waste. And you typically aren't going to know as a homeowner. Leave that up to the plumber to figure that one out. Again, we do fire damage. We do smoke. We do biohazard, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's living things, living organisms, or things that used to be alive that are no longer alive.
That's a job no one's fighting you for, brother.
So like
absolutely.
a raccoon in a soffit. Is that you?
That's us.
Oh.
Most of the time, and not to go down that this rabbit hole or raccoon hole.
That's a good one.
It's generally unattended deaths or suicides.
Oh, goodness.
Like I said, nobody was fighting him for that job. I knew exactly where he was going with this.
We do crime scene cleanup as well.
Wow.
That's where the bulk of that work comes from. As well as content. So a lot of individuals don't realize, especially when it gets to the rainier seasons as we're coming up to spring, and we get a lot of those rains that happen in spring and in the summertime. You might have a basement that's finished where all of a sudden your sump pump just craps out on you.
Yeah.
And now you've got all these contents or all these items in a home, or if you had a fire or had smoke damage, how does that get cleaned up? We address those contents as well.
I have a question, and I think this is for a lot of the moms out there. A lot of women, I just see it from women probably because that's just what I generate, but deal with health issues as far as mold is concerned. Now, if there wasn't like necessarily any water damage per se to a home, could you test for mold regardless?
So that's a great question. We as a company, we don't test for mold, and I think this is a good thing to look for in any remediation company that you use. You don't want to use companies that can have a conflict of interest. And what I mean by that is if we tested for mold, we could go into any home and say, hey, by the way, besides whatever loss you called us in here for, you've got mold. Put together a scope of work, do some remediation, mitigate that mold, come back and say, now you're clean. Now you've got a clean bill of health. So we stay away from that. We only do the mitigation portion. We don't test for that. So we would prefer that you use a third-party company to actually do that and test and put together a report.
And that on the other side of that is if the person's doing the testing and the remediation, they can create their own work.
Right, totally.
Yeah, you want independence.
A lot of trades, I guess, can do that, but I get it.
So if people want to reach out and get a little bit more information about Chicago Water and Fire Restoration, or if they need your services, how do they reach out to you?
So you can look us up online. Our website is www.cwafr.com, as in Chicago Water and Fire Restoration.com. You can also call us. Our numbers is 24/7. There is always a live human person that will answer.
That's awesome.
And that number is 630-829-9000.
Excellent. Cool. I'm glad that you were able to come on and
I appreciate you having me.
Talk about, we still have tons of stuff to talk about, so you're going to be on here again because there's so much stuff that we didn't even touch on. So, and I want to thank everyone for listening.
You talked about a pop machine for
honestly, that was pretty cool too. Evan thought it was cool. He jumped
Evan got on.
So he thought it was awesome. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. On next week's show, we will be welcoming back Zach Kreider with thefloorforyou.com in Mokina.
Ooh.
Different Zach.
Yes. I got back-to-back Zachs on shows. So any questions that you have for guests of the show, shoot us over a text at the Prepare to Repair hotline, which is area code 708-964-5500. Or if you maybe missed part of the show and you need a phone number or anything that you missed, we can actually help you out on that line as well. Or look us up on Facebook. You can also reach RJ Graham Plumbing for all your plumbing needs at area code 708-743-7426. But do head out to Ferguson Supply for all your kitchen, bath, and lighting and appliances needs. Your dream kitchen or bathroom is as close as Tinley Park. Till next week, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.